Hey, what's good? It's your boy MC. It's early in the morning on Tuesday. I should be playing an ad here, a spot for somebody else, but I want to take a second to thank everybody for listening to the Negro News Minute, the Vocal Minority Report. Hope you enjoy this episode. But if you could please go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, subscribe to the show, leave a rating, leave a review. It's really important. You hear it on all the podcasts, big, small. It's how we get our shine, how we get recognition. We can move up the ranks. It will help us grow, which is just beneficial for the show and the time it takes to produce this show. So I really appreciate everyone listening. I want to send a special shout out to Ashburn, Virginia, and Concord, New Hampshire. Appreciate you guys. From Elevate Digital, the Vocal Minority Report presents the Negro News Minute.
We got an impeachment for you. It's going to be yours. In fact, we even give you a short trial before we hang your nigger ass.
Dateline, Houston, Texas. The Reverend Al Green has received death threats after calling for the impeachment of Trump. Wait a minute, that's not Reverend, that's Rep, R-E-P. Oh, my bad. My bad. I kid, it's a bad joke. The Representative Al Green out of Houston has received death threats after calling for the impeachment of Trump. I'm going to play for you all the comments from the House floor made by Representative Green last Wednesday that caused him to receive multiple calls like this one.
When you're going to impeach nobody, you fucking nigger, try it and we'll lynch all you fucking niggers. You'll be hanging from a tree. I didn't see anybody calling for the impeachment of your nigger Obama. He was born in Kenya. He's not even an American. So fuck you, nigger.
Here are the comments. Kind of long, but worth it.
I rise today with a sense of responsibility and duty to the people who have elected me, a sense of duty to this country, a sense of duty to the Constitution of the United States of America. I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America for obstruction of justice. I do not do this for political purposes, Mr. Speaker. I do this because I believe in the great ideals that this country stands for. Liberty and justice for all. The notion that we should have government of the people, by the people, for the people. I do it because, Mr. Speaker, there is a belief in this country that no one is above the law, and that includes the President of the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, our democracy is at risk. Mr. Speaker, this offense has occurred before our very eyes. It is perspicuous. It is easy to understand. Mr. Speaker, we are talking about a president who fired the FBI director who was investigating the president for his connections to Russian involvement in the president's election. Mr. Speaker, this is not about the president firing the FBI director because he was investigating someone else. It's because the FBI director was investigating the president himself. And after firing the director, he went on to let us know that he considered the investigation when he fired him. And then he tweeted language that would be intimidation or a warning, an admonition, very strong to say the very least. Mr. Speaker, we cannot allow this to go unchecked. The president is not above the law. It is time for the American people to weigh in. Mr. Speaker, the American people are a part of this democracy. This is a participatory democracy. The American people don't participate on election day only. The American people participate daily, and this is your day to act. This is your day. I'm speaking to the American people. It is time for you to act. It is time for you to let us know where you stand. I've seen a poll that indicates that a majority now of those who are being polled are for impeachment. And I've seen another poll that says a plurality of those. Whether it's a majority or plurality, let's let the American people weigh in. The American people should speak up, speak out, stand up so that we will get a sense of what the American people want. This is not something to be taken lightly, and I do not. I think that this is one of the highest callings that a member of Congress has to address. I believe that this is where your patriotism is shown, where you demonstrate to the American people where you really stand. So I take this stand. It's a position of conscience for me. And I have not talked to another person in Congress about this. Each member of Congress has to make his or her own decision. So this is not about my encouraging other people to do things other than the American people. This is about my position. This is about what I believe. And this is where I stand. I will not be moved. The president must be impeached. For those who do not know, impeachment does not mean that the president will be found guilty. It simply means that the House of Representatives will bring charges against the president. It's similar to an indictment, but not quite the same thing. Once the president is impeached, then the Senate can have a trial to determine the guilt or innocence of the president, whether he is guilty or not guilty, to be more specific. But the House of Representatives has a duty that it can take up, and that is of impeachment. I stand for impeachment of the president. How can you weigh in? Well, you can contact my good friends over at Free Speech for People. And at this organization, they have a petition. The petition would allow you to weigh in and become a part of the nearly 1 million people who have already said the president ought to be impeached. You can weigh in at impeachdonaldtrumpnow.com, impeachdonaldtrumpnow.com. And believe me, if a plurality of the people are saying it now, and that's the poll that I really put my emphasis on, the one that says a plurality believes that the president should be impeached, more than 40%, I think that can grow. And I assure you, once you weigh in, American people, there will be a difference in the attitudes about this. I want to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity, because but for this opportunity, you might not hear my voice.
Green told a town hall meeting of the recordings and played them there. He said, quote, "It does not deter us. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to allow this to cause us to deviate from what we believe to be the right thing to do, and that is to proceed with the impeachment of President Trump." Still, Green noted that he has been taking proper security measures since getting the calls. He also told MSNBC host Joy Reid on Saturday that when people say that they will lynch you, I think you have to take that seriously. Over 20 other members of Congress have joined him in proposing impeachment. Dateline, Washington, D.C. The Associated Press reports that the nation's oldest civil rights organization, the NAACP, announced Friday what they described as a transformational system-wide refresh and strategic re-envisioning for the NAACP. This comes after current President Cornell Williams Brooks' contract is set to expire this summer, and he has not planned to have his contract renewed. Board Chairman Leon W. Russell and Vice Chair Derek Johnson will lead the organization until a new president is selected. Russell said, quote, "We understand and appreciate the historic model of protest, but at this point in time, we believe as an organization, we need to retool to become better advocates, better at educating the public, better at involving them in our operation, and better at legislation and litigation." Russell, who was made the Baltimore-based organization's board chairman in February, praised Brooks' leadership and said the NAACP remained at the forefront of civil rights activism in the United States. He also said, however, modern-day civil rights issues facing the NAACP, like education reform, voting rights, and access to affordable health care, still persist and demand our continued action. A national search for a new leader was expected to begin this summer. You know, I've often found myself wondering what the NAACP really does. I remember when I was a kid, I was a teenager, probably I was 15 or so, and I became a card-carrying member of the NAACP. I didn't really know what it meant, but it seemed it'd be important to do, and so whatever the process was, I don't know if I guess we had the internet. I don't know if I went online or how I got it, but I had my card, and I carried that thing in my wallet for a long time. But it meant something to me because, you know, being black, and I've always liked the term colored people, by the way. So imagine that, a guy who likes the term Negro and uses it every day likes the term colored people. But anyway, I just like the things that distinguish us So anywho, back to the story though. The NAACP has found itself battling for attention from black youth with groups like Black Lives Matter. See, we didn't have anything like that when I was a kid. You know, everyone knows Black Lives Matter has risen to prominence behind the street-level protests after the killings of how many black men and women by police. Catherine Flowers, founder of the Alabama Center for Catherine Flowers, founder of the Alabama Center for Rural Enterprise. Boy, that word is tricky. Rural. RURAL, an organization that advocates for poor and black people living in rural areas, said she wasn't surprised at the coming change, referring to Brooks. She said, quote, "I would like to see more of a grassroots effort by the NAACP. Clearly on a national level, we're at a crisis and it calls for a new kind of leadership." Dateline. Oh, looks like we're staying in Washington, D.C. All right, last month we played President Obama's first public comments in which he noted that partisan gerrymandering was one of the largest problems we face as a country. Well, surprisingly, he found what many think is an unexpected ally on Monday in Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, as he and other justices reject 2 gerrymandered North Carolina districts citing racial bias. You know me, let's talk about what gerrymandering means. It means to manipulate the boundaries of an electoral constituency so as to favor one party or class. And it actually comes from the early 19th century, from the name of Governor Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts, plus salamander, from the supposed similarity between a salamander and the shape of a new voting district on a map drawn when he was in office, the creation of which was felt to favor his party. The map, with claws, wings, and fangs added, was published to the Boston Weekly Messenger with the title, "The Gerry-Mander." Oh, that's interesting. So that's how we get gerrymandering. So if you knew that, forgive me. So the Supreme Court struck down 2 North Carolina congressional districts on Monday, ruling that lawmakers had violated the Constitution by relying too heavily on race in drawing them, and a decision that could affect many voting maps, generally in the South. It's unusual the coalition of justices that handed down the decision is really the latest in a series of setbacks for Republican-led legislatures. Recent cases concerning legislative maps in Alabama and Virginia as well, where the Supreme Court has insisted that packing black voters into a few districts, which dilutes their voting power, violates the Constitution. Way to go, Supreme Court. So writing for the majority, Justice Elena Kagan said that states did not have unlimited leeway in drawing districts in a claimed attempt to comply with the voting law. With the decision, the court was also trying to solve a constitutional puzzle: how to disentangle the roles of race and partisanship when black voters overwhelmingly favored Democrats. The difference matters because the Supreme Court has said only racial gerrymandering is constitutionally suspect. Former Attorney General Eric Holder said, quote, "This is a watershed moment in the fight to end racial gerrymandering. North Carolina's maps were among the worst racial gerrymanderers in the nation." Wow. Okay. Conservatives complained that the Supreme Court had succeeded only in making the law murkier. I've read that in several places, actually. With Hans von Spakovsky, a lawyer with the Heritage Foundation, saying in a statement that the Supreme Court says race can be a factor in redistricting, but not the predominant factor, a rule that is so vague, so broad, and so lacking in a definable legal standard that is not really a rule at all. You know, North Carolina Republicans said they were being victimized by... North Carolina Republicans are the victims. Interesting. Okay. We're being victimized by inconsistent standards. Robin Hayes, the chairman of the state party, added that the ruling did not affect the state's current map, which we believe is fair and legal. The ruling on Monday was the second Supreme Court victory for North Carolina Democrats this month. Last Monday, the justices declined to hear an appeal of a decision that has struck down parts of a restrictive North Carolina voting law that, among other things, tightened voter identification requirements and cut back on early voting. You know, I wondered throughout this whole election cycle how many people were talking about the Voting Rights Act and why they weren't, honestly. So, I'm glad to hear that the Supreme Court has stepped in and stepped up on these issues. A federal appeals court had ruled that the restrictions were an unconstitutional effort to target African Americans with almost surgical precision. That's a quote. Justice Kagan said black voters in coalitions with others had been able to elect their preferred candidates even before the redistricting. Adding more black voters to the district, she wrote, amounted to an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. The court divided 5-3 in rejecting District 12 in the south central part of the state. Lawmakers increased the number of black voters to 50.7% from 43.8%. To be specific, the new District 12 had 35,000 more African Americans of voting age and 50,000 fewer whites of that age, Justice Kagan wrote. The 5-justice majority for the part of the decision concerning District 12 was an unusual coalition, as I mentioned. Justices Clarence Thomas, who people were so surprised about on Twitter, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen G. Breyer, and Sonia Sotomayor joined Justice Kagan's majority opinion. In a concurrence, Justice Thomas said he agreed that the trial court had not committed a clear error in finding that, quote, race was North Carolina's predominant motive in drawing the district. Clarence Thomas is a fascinating dude, by the way. I don't know if anyone remembers that 60 Minutes profile of him a few years ago. One of the only times I've really seen him speak. From his powerful white wife to the way he lives his life. Very interesting. I digress. Next story, please. Dateline, the good old U.S. of A. This June 12th marks the 50th anniversary of Loving versus Virginia, the landmark Supreme Court decision which overturned bans on interracial marriage. In 2015, 17% or 1 in 6 newlyweds had a spouse of a different race or ethnicity compared with only 3% in 1967, according to a Pew Research Center report released Thursday in this NBC News story by Carmen Casido. Quote, more broadly, 1 in 10 married people in 2015, not just those recently married, had a spouse of a different race or ethnicity. This translates to 11 million people who were intermarried, the report states. Intermarried. Never heard that term before. Makes sense, though. Interracial. I wonder if y'all think I'm like slow. I've never heard some of these words. Anyway, this makes sense when I read it, but I hadn't thought about it. Latinos and Asians are the most likely groups to intermarry in the U.S., with 39% of U.S.-born Hispanic newlyweds and 46% of Asian newlyweds marrying a spouse of a different race or ethnicity. The most significant increase in intermarriage is among black newlyweds. Imagine that. The share of blacks marrying outside their race or ethnicity has tripled from 5% to 18% since 1980. There are gender differences, though, when it comes to intermarriage among certain groups. Here's a big for instance that I bet you all could not guess if you put all your money on it. Male black newlyweds are twice as likely to marry outside their race or ethnicity than black women, at 24% to 12%. While white newlyweds have seen a surge of intermarriage, with rates rising from 4 to 11%, they're the least likely of all major racial or ethnic groups to intermarry. Not surprising, people who are married to a person of a different race tend to live in metropolitan areas. So check out this segue. Speaking of metropolitan areas, let's go to my hometown for the next story. It's really early in the morning, so we got a different kind of news today. I hope this one is good for you guys. Play the sounder, people. Dateline, the Triple D or the Big D, Dallas. What up? Dallas's own Rachel Lindsay has become the first black Bachelorette when the show's 13th season premiered last night. So full disclosure, I did not watch. Probably won't ever watch, actually. But I did try to get through a couple of recaps, so I vaguely know what's going on. Anyway, it is historic, though, and it's very interesting to have a black person as the main attraction in a reality dating show, of course. You know, I've always wondered why they put black contestants on the show at all, knowing they aren't going to be picked. I mean, of course, you know, that's silly to say why put them there at all. But, you know, I've said there's got to be something in the contract that says they can't be eliminated on the first show, but they don't generally get very far. In my limited watching of these, I think the last one I watched from start to finish was probably Flavor of Love. But anyway, so Rachel is a 32-year-old attorney who was formerly a contestant on The Bachelor, Miss Rachel Lindsay. Show host Chris Harrison, who's also from Dallas, I believe, insisted that this season would be a memorable one. He said, quote, over the years, we've seen a lot of bachelors and bachelorettes come and go, but never have we seen anything like the outpouring of love and support as for our new bachelorette, Rachel Lindsay. That's interesting. I wonder why so much love and outpouring support for her. Maybe we can have a weekly bachelorette correspondent call in and keep us up to date on the show. If anybody's interested in doing that, email me, vocalreport@gmail.com, vocalreport@gmail.com, or hit me on Twitter @vocalreport. Let me know if you're interested. You know, I did read that one of the contestants, actually I heard this clip, one of the contestants named Dean said, I'm ready to go black and I'm never going to go back. I would play the audio, but the quality wasn't the best. And frankly, I almost threw up in my mouth a little bit when I heard that. But, hey, to each his own. She appeared to like it, so that's what matters. I can tell you, though, that she did have her first kiss with a white guy named Ryan. She said, he just took it upon himself, takes me in his arms and kissed me. And I was not ready for it, did not want to kiss anybody tonight, she insisted. But boy, did I love it. That's me reading a quote from her on her first kiss and her later makeout session with Ryan after he received his rose.
So, despite never having watched The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, she decided this could be her chance. When you watch the show, as I have for many years now, you start to understand that it's a highly produced thing that ends up going out to the world. The biggest drama, the biggest fights are really played up. So you didn't know that going in. You were kind of free from that.
I didn't have that experience by any means on the show. Like, nothing was exaggerated. Everything was real. People ask me all the time, do you feel like you were depicted as, who you really are? And I'm like, yes, that was me. That's why I say I was so surprised on the show, because I might not have known about Bachelor specifically, but I know the perception of reality TV shows, and it was nothing like that.
I want to ask you about breaking glass ceilings, for lack of a better phrase, because you're the first Black Bachelorette.
Yes, I am.
There hasn't been a Black Bachelor. How does that sit with you?
I mean, I'll be honest. When I was first approached, I couldn't believe it, but I was also very nervous, because to be the first at anything, that's terrifying. And I was representing myself as a woman, as a professional, as somebody in their 30s, and being Black. But it was such a great opportunity. Just the pros outweighed the cons.
Did producers talk to you about how to bring up race or whether to it all? Because we should be honest, for 15 years this show's been on, diversity's been a real problem. It's almost always white people falling in love with white people.
Yeah. No, they actually didn't. And I'm a pretty direct, opinionated, straightforward person, and I don't think it would really go well if someone told me what to do or say. So if I talked about race like I did with Nick, I did that because I wanted to. I think it was just a really relevant issue to address, and I wanted to do the same thing on my journey.
So we should say, in that last season, you told Nick that you had never dated a white guy seriously until him. Does that mean that you pushed for a more diverse group of male contestants on this new season?
I did. I was asked what I typically date, who I like, what I'm attracted to. I really don't have a specific race that I go towards or that I typically date. And I really wanted the men that were coming out of the limo on the first night for me to reflect that.
That was NPR's Rachel Martin with the Bachelorette, Rachel Lindsay. That's it for the stories today, folks. I want to take a minute and say thanks for listening. I appreciate all the positive feedback with this news thing that I'm doing. It's literally the most feedback I've gotten for something that we put out. And we put out a lot of episodes, from Asia McClain to Rabia Chowdhury to Jesse Thorne of NPR's Bullseye. There's so many, to the Interho Uprising. There's the list goes on and on. Julianne Malveaux, we've had so many people on the show, over 50 episodes, 45, 50 guests, but this news stuff gets the most feedback. So really appreciate it. Appreciate everybody listening. We're going to do this every day, Monday through Thursday. Give you the new episodes of the Vocal Minority Report on Sundays, I'm thinking, but it'll be sometime over the weekend. If you know of any stories you want to share with me, email me, vocalreport@gmail.com. Tweet the show, Vocal Report, or Vocal Report MC. We have 2 Twitter handles, one for me, one for the show. Holla at me. Remember, go to iTunes, subscribe, leave a rating, write a review. You write a review, we'll send you a shirt of your choice. Maybe we'll up the ante a little bit. Really need your help. Like the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Vocal Minority Report. Go to the website, donate if you feel so inclined to. It would really help. We need to upgrade the equipment. You can hear this mic. It's not the mic I'm used to. My adapter broke on my other, so I need to update some equipment. Got to update this and upgrade the studio. Really want to keep going. I appreciate the love. For Elevate Digital, the Vocal Minority Report. This has been the Negro News Minute. All power to the people. Peace.